going to talk about one of David's wives from the book of 2 Samuel. I'm going to pronounce her name as Michal. I think there's a more proper pronunciation that relies on a lot of phlegm in the back of the throat, and you know, with COVID, I can't take a chance. So I'm just going to go with the easy pronunciation. Just stick with Michal. This one's entitled Michal the Judgmental. Let's flip over to Matthew chapter 7 real quick, though, before we start that. You know, this is part of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, kind of towards the end of that. And Jesus says in chapter 7 of Matthew, verse 1, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." How does that fit with our culture today?
You read way too much.
I read way too much?
Yeah. You're supposed to stop at don't judge.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Do not judge. Boy, that's a popular one. I don't know if I see a scriptural reference more often on Facebook than that one, or on comments, any kind of comments. If you've read an article or something, and people start chiming in with their opinions, you know. I know you can't go to. Not that I go there very much anymore, but if you go to a story that came from KCBD, man, the moment it's posted, within 30 seconds, there'll be 10 comments, I swear.
And they're awful.
They're usually pretty negative, aren't they?
Well, and just people being ugly to each other. I'm like, if you were standing probably right there in front of me, you would not say those awful things.
Maybe not.
Well, yeah, you would hope not. But
You
yeah,
would hope
you're
not.
right. I mean, if you're going to do that on social media, why not do this?
You know, 5 years ago, I wouldn't think you'd see that too often. Nowadays, I don't know. I mean, I heard about a story, I can't remember where it was, Wisconsin or Minnesota, one of them snow states. And I guess two neighbors got in a big argument about plowing their snow. And they got mad and they got into a big shouting match. And the guy went in his house, came out with a gun, and shot both of them. Yeah, shot the husband and the wife. And I guess he realized that they were still alive because he went back in his house, came back out, and put more shots in until he killed them. Then he went in the house and he killed himself over snow shoveling. That's hard to say. But boy, culture today, though, is really big on tolerance, aren't they? We're really good about, you do your thing and let me do my thing, and don't look at me too closely. It seems like it's pretty popular to be to not be judging, to just ignore each other, go about our business, right? But like Keith said, I read too far. Actually, I don't think in this context I read far enough.
You can't read that verse in context.
What does Jesus say after this? He says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." And then he goes on to say, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces." And then towards the end of this section, Jesus says in verse 15, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves." And that whole section talks about look for the kind of fruit that people are bearing. How can I look at the fruit that you're bearing without judging it? What's Jesus talking about here? I mean, it's probably a good thing that the verse doesn't end right there. Don't judge, or you too will be judged.
Oh, you can't read past the comment. And I think that's what Jesus is getting at. You know, we all make judgments every day, even if we want to say we don't, but we do. But be careful about me judging you for something you're doing. Make sure I'm not doing it too. You know, because that puts me in conflict or in hypocrisy.
When I was a kid, I remember in our house, if we ever got a treat or a snack, anything like that outside of normal dinner, it was a big deal. I still, to this day, struggle with anybody touching the food on my plate. I was always hungry as a kid, and it's not stopped. 57 years old, and I'm still always hungry. It's a problem. But I was always concerned about my food, and when my mom would give us a snack, if I thought one of my sisters got more than me or got something better than I got, or if they thought the same thing about me, you know, we were going to get after it. The fight was going to ensue, and probably Dad was going to pull out the belt at some point. When we had those fights, I'm pretty sure that my motivation was not, I am very concerned about my sister. Her weight seems to be going up a little bit, and I don't want her life to be shortened or hampered in any way because she's not in good shape. I care so deeply about her health that I want to make sure that she doesn't get too much or the wrong thing. Those thoughts never crossed my mind. My motivation, my perspective was that she's getting something better than me, she's getting something more than me, I deserve it, I want to have it. That was my motivation the whole time. You think Jesus is talking about our motivation here when he talks about judging?
It goes back to that, when I choose to be the judge, there's only really one but
It's kind of like, whoever said it, Paul or Timothy, said, be angry. Don't sin when you're angry. Didn't tell us not to be angry. They said, don't sin in your anger.
Yeah.
And maybe our judging has to be the same way. Don't sin when you judge.
Yeah.
You know, be very cautious, very careful, because he goes on to talk about judging dogs as swine.
Yeah.
I mean, effectively,
Yeah.
not them, but what you do with your good deeds, what you do with things. So, yeah,
I love that comparison.
you know, be careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause that's another one that society tries to tell you it's wrong to get angry. I think Jesus was angry in the temple, pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Seemed like he might have had a couple other times too where it was creeping up for sure.
Look, we're probably supposed to be angry about sin. Sin in our own life, or you know, what sin does to others. It's probably a good time to be angry about that.
Yeah. Anger is a great motivator. Great motivator. Great energizer. Can really spur you on to action. You know, I have done some good things, I think, because I got angry. I've done a lot of not so good things too. All right, so in this context of judgment and judging, we're going to look at the story of Michal real quick. Let's flip over to 2 Samuel, chapter 6. And let's read this story. So this is David. He is now king of Israel, and they have conquered. They've got Jerusalem ID'd as their new capital city, and he's wanting to bring the Ark of the Covenant there. And so this is where we're at. Saul is dead. The Philistines have been defeated, and now David is kind of starting his reign. So it starts off with a little bit of a hitch in his giddy up, so to speak. David again brought together out of Israel chosen men, 30,000 in all. He had all his men set out from the, I'm going to butcher these words again today. He and his men set out from Baal of Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim there that are on the ark. They set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the ark of God on it. And Ahio was walking in front of it. David and the whole house of Israel were celebrating with all their might before the Lord, with songs and with harps, lyres, tambourines, sistrums, and cymbals. When they came to the threshing floor of Nakon, Uzzah reached out and took hold of the ark of God because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of his irreverent act. Therefore God struck him down, and he died there beside the ark of God. Then David was angry because the Lord's wrath had broken out against Uzzah, and to this day that place is called Perez Uzzah. David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" He was not willing to take the ark of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite for 3 months, and the Lord blessed him and his entire household. Now King David was told, the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God. So David went down and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. When those who were carrying the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, he sacrificed a bull and fattened a calf. And he sacrificed a bull, he didn't fatten the calf, he sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. Wow. David, wearing the linen ephod, danced before the Lord with all his might, while he and the entire house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from the window. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. After he had finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. Then he gave a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins to each person in the whole crowd of Israelites, both men and women, and all the people went to their homes. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, "How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, disrobing in the sight of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would." David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor." And Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. What a story. That story all by itself would make a great movie. Just that story, I'm telling you. I know I'm always wanting to make movies out of the Bible because there's nothing good to watch. That's probably the last thing I need to do is watch more television. What's your first impressions? What's your first thoughts? What jumps out to you? What characters speak to you? Who do you identify with or not? Let's get this going.
Poor old Uzzah.
Yeah, poor old Uzzah.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that because it sounds like he was trying to do a noble thing.
Yeah. And was it Uzzah's idea to put the ark on a wagon? Was it his idea, or was it David's idea? Or was it the priest's idea? I mean, I don't even know if it was his idea to do it in the first place.
So they weren't carrying it correctly.
Oh, that's right. How's the Ark of the Covenant supposed to be carried?
On 2 wooden stands.
On those poles, right? You have those poles on each side, and they run it through the loops, and you're supposed to carry it. But they decided they were going to put it on a wagon.
Yeah. Obviously, he was complicit in doing the wrong
I think
thing.
so.
God didn't kill an innocent man. I don't think he got angry incorrectly.
He did call it an irreverent act. And I wonder if they'd been carrying it correctly and the guy stumbled, if us had been walking alongside and touched it, would the same thing have happened? I wonder about that.
Well,
What was
the bottom line was, I mean, God set in place the rules.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the rules unless this happens here.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And that's kind of what we do today. You know, we say, well, you know, everybody tries to justify their actions. But I think it just speaks to when God gives his law, that's it.
That would be nice if that were true all the time. But David would have been dead if that were true, because he ate the bread that was only supposed to be in the tabernacle because him and his buds were hungry. Yeah. And the priest gave him the bread, and it was okay. And that was absolutely against the law.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it has to. I don't have the answer, but I just know that sometimes when we're disobedient, God doesn't kill us. Sometimes when we're horrible and kill other people, he doesn't kill us.
Yeah.
So there's more to his mercy than just the law.
And it seems like sometimes, like I think about Ananias and Sapphira, to me, it's the heart issue.
Yeah.
And God knows, you know, like Randy said, you know, God knew David's heart. Do you understand? I don't know.
Yeah, that fits right in with Matthew chapter 7, verse 1, doesn't it? Because boy, that's what God needs to be judging, is people's hearts, because I don't know people's hearts. I don't know my own heart, to be perfectly frank.
Well, and then there's the families who took the ark to their house after the incident happened. They are blessed. They have treated the ark with respect. Here's other family, they've had that ark in their house for how long?
Yeah.
They've adopted a home, you know, for what? Probably, I mean, and
I wonder if David and the priests and everybody were more focused on this great celebration. David is finally king. We've conquered. We're setting up, Jerusalem to be the place. We're taking the ark. It's all lots of pomp and circumstance. It's a lot of celebration. It's all exciting, and emotions got the best of people. Maybe.
You know, I think it just gives me hope that when I mess up, I might not die instantly, and even if my intentions are great. And it appears that David over his lifetime was, he was arrogant from time to time. But he still wanted to know God.
Yeah.
He still wanted to do the right thing.
Yeah, because what happened right after that?
Yeah.
Right? He sees the prosperity that comes to that guy whose name I had to say like 27 times. He sees the prosperity and he gets, okay, we need to bring this ark home. We need to bring it home. And what does he do? If you flip over, and we don't have time to do that now, but if you flip over to First Chronicles, I think it's chapter 15, there's a little more detail in there, and you find out that David says, we got to do this right. We got to go back and look at the scripture and see what it says, and they find out exactly what they're supposed to do. And David makes sure that everybody follows that pattern the way God laid it out. And I think David's even got more reason to celebrate at this point, because now they're coming out and they know they're doing it the way God instructed them to do it. They know God's going to be pleased. They know they're in his will and doing his will. And we know what David's heart is like. right? I almost wonder if that's why David's worship was so demonstrative, because he didn't have anything to fear. He didn't have that anger anymore. Remember that, David was mad. He was mad that Uzzah got struck down. He was mad at God. He named that place, Perez Uzzah. I think it means something to the effect of outbreak against Uzzah. He's going to put a marker in the road right where it happened, like those memorials that people put on the side when somebody gets run over on the side of the road, or dies in a car accident. He wanted to remember it. But at this point, David's not angry. He's got no reason to fear. He's in God's will, and he's joyful. And I almost get the feeling that David he's not celebrating that he is king. He's celebrating that God is king, which is something that Saul could never seem to do. Saul never understood that. So tell me about David's celebration now. How do you view that? Is it hard? Does it make total sense to you? Does it confuse you? Does it bother you? We don't really know what that ephod or ephod, however you pronounce that, we don't really know. I tried to look up several different experts who thought they would know, but I'm telling you, they all have different thoughts. The most common one is that the ephod would have been something that a priest would wear while they're going about their duties, working behind the scenes. And so it probably was something that was kind of like getting out of the shower and wrapping a towel around yourself. He may have had an undergarment on underneath the ephod, probably would have, but this garment probably just kind of wraps around his waist, or maybe mid-abdomen, which would explain why Michal said that he was half dressed or half naked. So he's now celebrating wholeheartedly. And what's the term? How is he celebrating? With all of his might. What does that sound like?
It's like he wasn't thinking about anything except praising God. He didn't think about what he looked like or what his wife or whoever might think about it. Mm-hmm. And what I was thinking was, it's sad that she can't understand that celebration. She obviously doesn't feel the same spirit for God that he does.
No.
Or she would understand and want to be down there with it.
Why do you think she doesn't understand it?
She's all
That's excellent. That's the point that was stressed in the prep class quite a bit, is that she's never described as David's wife. Michal, wife of David. She's never described that way. She's described as Michal, daughter of Saul.
It's unlikely that this was their first conversation of this kind.
Well,
It doesn't start that way.
Yeah, and also because David is a man of the people, and her father was not that. He was always bigger and better than all the people.
What's the song that all the women used to sing?
Yeah.
Remember? Saul has killed his thousands, and David has killed his tens of thousands. Man, that just drove Saul like nails on chalkboard. He did not like that.
Well, at this point, David's all about God. Michal's all about Michal. She is embarrassed. How dare he embarrass her? She is, like you say, the daughter of Saul. David didn't be nobody if he hadn't married him. It's all about her at this point, and she is mad. She's not just.
But we read in 1 Samuel that Michal loved David.
At that point.
She loved it.
Is this at a point, how many wives did he have at this point? I'm just curious.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. He either has just Michal or he has Michal and one more. I cannot remember the timing.
So there might be a lot more going on there that I'm sure that we.
And
Yeah.
this is before Bathsheba.
that we-
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
We
this is
don't,
all before that.
that we don't know about. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
You know, in their beginning, remember, Saul is, when he starts really getting irritated with David, he wants to kill him, right? He throws the spear at him, and he decides he wants to give his eldest daughter to David, and then hopefully that would entice David to take the armies and head up to fight the Philistines, and then he would just believe that the Philistines would kill David, and he wouldn't have to worry about it. But David didn't accept his first daughter. Now, we don't know why. We don't know he knew what Saul was up to, or maybe she was not the, she might have not been the fairest of Saul's daughters. Maybe, I don't know. But then Saul finds out that Michal loves David. And he's like, now I got him in. And so he gives Michal to David, and David accepts this time. But as soon as he does that, Saul tries to kill David. And he sends some men up to go kill him in the middle of the night, or they're going to kill him in the morning. And Michal goes to David and says, look, my father's got plans to kill you. You need to escape. And she helps him escape, and he gets away. And she puts an idol in the bed, and she puts some goat's hair on it, And so she tells the guys that he's sick. And I don't know why they can't kill him while he's sick. I guess it's like an execution. You got to wait till somebody gets well before you can execute him, I don't know the concept there. But they come back the next morning, and they're literally Saul says, bring his bed to me. They want to pick up the bed and bring it to him. But David's gone. And Michal helped him. But at some point, while David's gone, Saul takes Michal and gives her to another maiden. How hard would that be?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's just so much more in that culture that I think we just have no idea of how, especially with how women were viewed and treated, and having to deal with other wives. I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
And what we can judge is Michael's actions. We cannot judge what she was thinking.
Why she's there,
Right.
why she's making those choices.
Because that's what the lesson's about. Be careful judging Michael.
Exactly. And that's exactly what part of this lesson is. How do we judge her? How do we judge her with a heart of Christ?
A single moment in time doesn't define a person, though. I hope not.
Except for us.
Well, and really Michael too, because David put her aside because of it.
Yeah.
So that moment changed her life. That's good.
Yeah. What's the last verse of chapter 6? And Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. Now, did God make her barren? Or she was only with David for a really short amount of time when they first got married, and then David escaped, and they're not reunited again until after David is king. And the guy that Michal, I can't remember his name, I can't pronounce it either, so I'm not going to try. But that guy that had Michal, he gave her back. He's like, this isn't right. She needs to be with her husband. So David takes her back. But just judging on that last interaction, I'm guessing they probably didn't spend a lot of time together after that.
Yeah, he wasn't very kind to her.
Yeah.
He was probably honest. He made it right.
Yeah. Even when I'm right, Teresa does not like me responding in a smug or smart alecky way. I still need to come at it from a point of humility, which means I need to go walk around the backyard for a few more minutes until I get my mind right.
Well, actually, I don't know if they do kind of honest. From the text, it doesn't sound like it, but I have no idea. Actually,
I think it would be hard to read that from a kind perspective with a happy voice, maybe.
I think she was embarrassed by his behavior too, because one of the footnotes in my Bible said it's like a tight fitting, sleeveless, almost like a dress that sounds like a thigh high.
Oh.
I mean, And so he's not really, and if he's dancing around and stuff, you never know what might be happening. But,
Yeah, modesty back then was,
it was
significant.
So she may have just been embarrassed by his lack of clothing, and, I mean, I know I probably would have been, you know, you just think how it's not becoming, but I guess we see people these days, and they may do crazy things or, you know, look awful, and they're like, oh, just praising the Lord, you know, or, you know, you think about holy rollers in the aisle, you know, back in the old days,
Careful.
talking about things, you know, I mean, we think, oh, that was crazy, but, you know, that's how they wanted to praise the Lord. I mean, that was their display of love and affection, I guess. I don't know, it's just a lot of different views from, you know, what we feel like is appropriate.
it doesn't seem like Michal's motivation or her thoughts about David were, let me get this plank out of my eye before I point out the speck in my husband's eye, was it? And that's where I feel sorry for Michal. Because what I think is at the heart of this is that she was raised in Saul's household. What was her opportunity to really know God?
Slim.
Slim. And look who she's married to. Where's their level of faith? Where's their level of belief? Where's their rejoicing? Where, you know, and she hasn't even got to live with her husband. She's given away to another man. There's probably, like everybody has said in here, there's embarrassment, there's resentment, there's anger, there's all these things that you would just assume. I mean, we can't know, but you would assume that those would just be natural. Some of that stuff is probably there. Kind of feel like her response is typical of what you would see today or any other time if something bizarre happened, you know. Because she's not looking at this from the same perspective as David is.
But David didn't help her either. I mean, pretty much says, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
I will become even more undignified than
That's
that.
kind of what he said. Some of the notes I took during the prep classes, I wrote down, she loved David, but David loved God.
It was unusual in that time for people to act like they was, even the priests themselves were on robes, so when they went up the steps to the temple, the tabernacle in the desert, nobody would see up their robes.
Yeah.
It was prescribed, it was expected. So it was different, you know, just to see that.
Yeah.
And if she thought that, the people may or may not have thought it. But, you know, it's kind of unusual to see something like that.
One of the things that Dewey brought up during the class was that there is some, this is kind of even though it looks like David, this is hard for me, okay? So if I get this wrong, forgive me. Even though it looks like David, to me, and I think from the outside world, not knowing who David is, not knowing his heart, you would look at this and say, this boy's got some problems with ego and needing attention, and right? I mean, look at him. He's making a spectacle of himself. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks. This is ridiculous, right? But in fact, what David was doing was humbling himself before God. And he was saying, I don't care what I look like. I don't care what other people think. All I care is that God knows I'm worshiping him, and I'm so overjoyed with who he is and what he's done for me. And I'm going to display that with all my might in the only way that I know how. And so it was a very humbling experience for David. It came from a place of humility. But and that kind of experience was not that uncommon in not the way David did it, but that humble kind of like a king humiliating himself and then again being almost recrowned and re-robed. It's almost like a fresh start kind of thing. It's like the people see that their king is another man like them. He feels their pain. He understands what their lives are like. And now he's going to rise back up as their king, and they can put their trust in him. And those kinds of things did happen in those time periods, in those, roughly the same time frame around where David was. So this was kind of in line with that, but different.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I really think that's probably the theme of David. He was arrogant from time to time, but he humbled himself. We know he was humble before the Lord. And so what the Lord's promise to David was, because you're humble, because you're who you are, you will have a very difficult life, but you will be honored. Your spiritual life will be honored, and I'll honor you in my kingdom eventually. But that's kind of scary, if that's true. If that's really what humbling ourselves before the Lord means, it may not mean we have an easy life here. It may mean just the opposite. That I know I can use you, I know I can trust you, so he may give us an awful lot in this life to handle as a reward for the next life, is what I think the thing with David is. I'm sure correct.
Yeah.
Look at the similarities between David, just in this story even, and Christ. Christ came to the Gentiles. Slave girls.
Yeah.
And all the Jews were kind of like, what are you doing with him? You can't be the Messiah.
And the week, of his crucifixion, and the abuse and the embarrassment, being stripped down to basically just underwear. He's lugging his cross, carrying it himself, and then he's hung up there and displayed, and everybody's betting on who gets his stuff, and people are yelling insults, and it's,
So we might can agree that if Jesus suffered more than anybody else on the earth that ever lived, then he's also the most exalted that he wanted to ever live.
Randy, I don't like that.
I don't either.
Because you're associating.
I don't have to watch it. I don't like it at all, but I'm afraid it's the truth. Or at least it was for Jesus.
I think another common thing between David and Jesus is what do we think of David? He is a guy who is all in. So much so that we see this type of worship and rejoicing to an extreme. And also we see his ego, we see his mistakes, and his mistakes are just as big. Everything in David, it's all in. He goes 100%. He gives it all.
Isn't there a cliche about that? Great pride, great fall, something along those lines.
Was Jesus all in? I think Bruce Smith said during it. I think it was Bruce who said, Bruce Smith always has great things to say. I love listening to that man talk. I think he said, maybe that's why so many people didn't recognize Jesus when he came, because they weren't all in. How many people really recognized who Jesus was early on, especially? That's a pretty small number.
Not even his parents.
And I tell you what, I have had that thought in my head when people say, what if Jesus just kind of came back as himself and just started doing what Jesus does? Would I recognize him? Or would I be on the bandwagon of people chunking stones?
Now, there's a whole quarter of that for a whole year.
So as we look at this concept, then, let's get back on track here for the last 3 minutes we've got. Let's study this concept of judgment then. What's the difference between making a right judgment or making a wrong judgment? What's the difference? What is it that really defines those two things? Guidance of the Spirit, yeah. I like that.
I was gonna say prayer.
Prayer. Boy, you better be prayerful if you're about to.
And where your heart's at too. Am I making this judgment, calling it out against you? Because
Take
I
time,
want.
Jimmy. I can laugh because I've done the same thing with Jude teaching, and I've done it twice. Sorry, it's okay. But you're talking, Keith, about the condition of the heart.
Right. Am I doing that because I want to be right? Or am I doing that because I want you to be righteous?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like that.
So.
Yeah. I know Jack used to use that illustration all the time, that you see somebody and they are barreling 100 miles an hour towards a cliff. And he says, it's great to be down there at the bottom of the cliff and console somebody and help them heal their wounds and stuff. But why don't we want to be at the top of that cliff with the big stop sign ready to jump in front of them and take that collision to stop somebody from going off that cliff? Why don't we want to do that?
Makes me think about the Stevensons with their twins. And to stop them from going over that cliff.
It takes real commitment, doesn't it? And a real sense of all in, a real sense of, I got to be willing to risk it all.
So much of that's relational too. You can have a different conversation with someone with whom you have a relationship than with someone you don't.
Yeah.
It's a lot different.
It's a little late to invest in somebody when you're coming at them from the judgmental side, when you haven't done the work and the effort to get to a point where maybe that person is receptive to hear.
I don't know, we won't have a conversation, but it's a different conversation.
It is. I wouldn't want to have that if I haven't had that, if I haven't taken the opportunity, especially.
And still may not be receptive.
Pardon?
They still may not be receptive, even if you put the time in.
That's true.
I think that's what we see in Michael,
What's that, Raven?
that she's not receptive.
Yeah.
Oh, she's been around David, yeah, they had ministers, but she has watched all these years. And so she still doesn't get.
She's not got judgment for David that glorifies God. She's got judgment for David that allows her to share her concerns, how it's affecting her. And that's, I mean, my goodness, what kind of a lesson is that for all of us, right? Well, when you think about the effort that David put in to everything that he did, to his prayer life, to sacrifice, to worship, to psalm writing, you name it. Nothing wrong with comparing ourselves to those, especially in Scripture, who have laid a path for us. Whether it's Paul or David or Christ himself, there's no reason we can't look at that and say, where can I improve? Where am I missing the mark? What do I need to ask God to help me with? So thank you all today. I appreciate all your comments. Not an easy topic to talk about, but I appreciate it. Y'all have a blessed week.
Thank you.